All right, guys, we're back on the blog this week, and I'm excited to introduce you to a new to me author, Sarah Loudin Thomas. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's good to meet you here through technology. And we were just saying that before I started recording that not a big tech person, but I love this kind of technology where we can meet and get to know each other and share with you watchers, listeners, readers. Um, some authors and what they're doing. And we're going to talk about Sarah's new book and some other writing stuff today. So before we get into that, I just want to let her introduce herself. So, Sarah, just tell us a little bit about you and what you want us to know.
So you did a great job with my name, Sarah Loudin Thomas. And I like to tell people I write Appalachian historical.
Mm,
And I joke that there are only two or three of us writing that genre, but it's a really great genre. So I write stories set in Appalachia, often set in my native West Virginia. I'm
mm.
a seventh generation West Virginian. My husband and I own the family farm that has been in our family since before the Civil War. So I love to get home, and that's my favorite place to sit out on the deck and do my writing. But I really love writing stories that are rooted in Appalachia. There's a lot of stereotypes about the part of the world I'm from, and I like to let people know that it really is a beautiful, special place. And so this latest book, these Tangled Threads, is actually set in North Carolina, which is where my husband and I live now. And my editor, when we started talking about what I would write next, and I came up with some more West Virginia book ideas, he said, there are other states in Appalachia. Like, okay. So we went with North Carolina, although I did work in a West Virginia connection, so it's still there.
Good. So, is that like the western part of North Carolina or?
Yes.
Okay.
We're in the mountains, and these Tangled Threads is set in primarily in Asheville. So it's around Biltmore Estate and Biltmore Estate
Oh,
Industries, and I actually worked for Biltmore Estate for 6 years
my goodness.
in the public. Yeah, it was in the public relations department. It was a dream job. I loved it. Um, and so my editor said, "Well, what about a Biltmore book?" And I kind of laughed and said, "Have you read my books?" Because Biltmore is very fancy and my
Yes.
books are not.
Uh-huh.
But then we hit on this Biltmore State Industries idea, and that just fit my brand perfectly.
Very cool. So I'm going to the Blue Ridge Conference the end of May, right there, and that
Such a great conference.
it is.
Yes.
I've been twice, so I'm really looking forward to going back. Yeah, you're not going to be there this time, are you, by chance?
No, it's
Okay.
it's a full week. And with I have I'm actually at my job right now. I'm the director of the Mitford Museum in Hudson, North Carolina, Jan Karen's museum here based on her Mitford series.
Yeah,
And it was just to take a week away is really tough.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I thought, oh gosh, if she's going to go, we can meet in person.
I
Um,
wish we could.
I know, but this is second best right here. So tell
Yeah.
us a little bit. So you have a full-time job, but you're also an author. So what does that look like for you? A typical day for you to fit all of this stuff in, balancing your work there and your writing and your family life. How do you manage all that?
Yeah, people ask me how I managed to have a full-time job and be a writer. And I always say, well, I don't have kids. So we just have one very pushy dog that has to be kept up with. But writing for me it's a respite, and I just love it. I get up in the morning, take the dog for a walk, come do my work during the day, and then when I get home in the evening, I spend some quality time with the dog again and my husband. But then I can sit down and write, and I'm an evening writer, so I know a lot of people have that creativity first thing in the morning, but for me, that end of the day, it's like a treat that I get to savor at the end of the day and sit down and do my writing or marketing or whatever it is I'm working on, and I just love it. So that's how it balances for me. I think it balances for me because it's a joy and a pleasure as opposed to another job. I mean, some
Right.
days it feels like a job,
Yeah.
but most of the time it doesn't. So it's just a delight.
Yeah, I get that. I'm not a morning writer either, like not a morning
Yeah.
person. And I like to do a lot in the evening. And even when I'm in the living room with my husband, and he's got a movie or a TV show on, I'm in there with my laptop and I'm doing
Yeah.
something. And he said, "You're always working. You need to rest and take a break." I said, "This is like not work to me. It's fun.
Right.
This is
But my favorite,
go
my
ahead."
husband's a musician, so my absolute favorite is when I'm in my office or in the living room or wherever I am writing and he's playing. He plays in the praise band at church. So he'll be practicing his music and I'll be writing and I'm just like the creativity is
Yeah.
flowing and it
Yeah.
feels wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, with that type of schedule, how long does it normally take you to write a book?
It takes about 9 months to do. It's a year from sitting down to come up with the idea to writing it to doing. I always do a couple of edits before I send it to my publisher, so it takes about a year to do
Hmm.
the whole process. I could probably do it a little bit faster, but it's nice to have a year.
Oh, yeah. I know. I'd be happy if I could pump out like that at once a year. That would be
Yeah.
great. I'm not to that point yet, but I'm working on it, getting there. Um, so do you have like critique partners or anybody you brainstorm with or bounce ideas off of in that time frame where you're writing the book?
No, and for a long time I thought, well, I need to find a critique part, and I tried like some writing groups and some, but I really, for me, I need to tell the whole story before I share it with anybody.
Hmm.
I'll talk a little bit about what I'm writing next, but for me, the writing process, I'm telling me a story.
Right, right.
So if I spend too much time, with it and editing as I go and that sort of thing, it dilutes it for me and I lose my momentum. So
Hmm.
for me, I write straight through and then once I have it, at that point, sometimes I'll have some early readers. My husband, right now, the novel that's coming out in 2025, I've written the first draft and I'm reading it aloud to my husband, which
Mm.
is
That's,
so much fun because
yeah.
he's giving me feedback and I can hear how it sounds. So
Hmm.
and I start to get feedback, but I really am kind of a solo writer.
Now, do you plot out ahead of time or do you just write as you go?
To some degree. I started out as a hardcore pantser. It's like I'm starting here and I'm gonna go until I get wherever
Mhm.
I'm gonna go.
Right.
Um, my editor my editor finally persuaded me that it's actually really helpful to have at least a bare bones outline. So, and dang it, he's right. It's it's so much more efficient. So I typically come up with kind of a high level outline that's here's where I'm beginning, here's some key plot points along the way, and generally where I think I'm going to end up. It inevitably changes, but
Hmm.
it's so helpful to have that general flow kind of planned out so that when you write yourself into a corner and you're like, oh my gosh, where was I going? I forgot where I was going.
Yeah.
You have directions.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I like that. I think I'm working toward that because I've just been a pantser so far. And
Yeah,
that's a
I
lot of
loved being
editing.
because I'm telling myself a story.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell it and then tell it again.
Yeah. It's fun, right?
Yeah,
So you've already told us you write Appalachian historical.
historical.
So what inspired you to write that genre?
Oh, my 7 generations of West Virginia family.
Okay.
Growing up, my dad told so many stories about family, and a lot of the family members that he talked about and told these fabulous stories about were gone already. My grandmother died when dad was 18. My grandfather died when I was 6 months old.
Mhm.
There's a great uncle who had passed away. So all these people that he told these stories about were gone. And I just wanted to like know them and be around them. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to start writing books, not specifically about those people, but characters that share some of the traits and some of the stories. And I weave in some of my dad's favorite stories into my books. So it was just, I had been so steeped in this my whole growing up that it just sort of naturally flows out of me. And these are the people and the places I love. So,
Well, I believe that shows in an author's writing when you're writing books about inspired by some
yes.
or someone that you love. Yeah, I think that really
The
makes
first manuscript I attempted was about a girl in a southern town who was a reporter and the romance, and it was terrible. It was just not good. And I finally wisely put it aside. And one day I sat down and I started writing a story that was kind of rooted in my grandparents, these my dad's parents who had died before I got to know them. And it just suddenly I was in the sweet spot and I
Yeah,
have never left.
yeah, that's awesome. When you know you're doing what you're supposed to do because you feel so passionate about it.
Yeah.
So what about your research for novels? I know you like growing up in West Virginia, you experienced a lot of things, but there's got to be a lot of research into historical.
Yes. So initially, and I write historical, but I write kind of recent historical 20th century. I
Okay.
have yet to go into the 1800s. It's all 1900s. And so a lot of my initial research was picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Dad, what kind of stove did Grandma cook on?"
Oh, there you go.
And that was so much fun because it was based in
Hmm.
reality and in my
Yeah.
family around me. And I had really shied away from writing books that were set in real places. I made up a fictional town and did everything there, but with um oh my goodness, the oh shoot. Do you do this where you blank on the titles of your own
Yes.
novels?
Well, I don't have that many to blank on, so maybe one day.
when when silence sings, yes, when silence sings. Um, I was going to set it in a real place. There was this Thurmond, West Virginia, is a historic town that was it was just this, what do they call it, the Dodge City of the East.
Okay.
It was where all the outlaws went. There was gambling, there was drinking, there was uh, more money went through Thurmond, West Virginia than like New York at that point
Yeah.
because their trains were through there and it was,
Mhm.
so I was like, this is a fabulous place. And today, Thurmond, West Virginia is a ghost town. It's owned by the National Park Service. It's part of the New River Gorge area. So I thought, well, if I totally mess it up and get things wrong in my research, the census said that there were 7 residents in, I think, 2010. So I
Yes.
was like, 7 people will call me out on it. I felt
Yeah.
like this was a safe bet. So I decided to set a story in a real location. And this was the first time that I like went to a place to do the research. And first of all, if I had known this job existed, this is what I would be. A gentleman who is a ranger with the National Park Service and a historian and a curatorial professional. It's like you can be a curator of the national forest.
Oh man.
So he took me into Thurmond, which is, it looks just like it did in the 1930s.
Mm.
And he had the key, like he could unlock the buildings and he could show me around. And at one point he turned to me and he said, is this helpful? I said, "I'm walking around in my story."
Oh,
This
that's
is
fun.
amazing.
Oh,
And
that's
I was hooked.
mm-hmm.
So now I really like to find obscure pieces of Appalachian history
Mm-hmm.
and and do the research, read the books, go online,
Mm-hmm.
um, talk to people.
Yeah.
It's so amazing the amount of research that's at our fingertips now, thanks to the internet. But
Yes.
it,
Do you
the
still
danger
go
is that you
back?
get so wrapped up in,
You get wrapped up in
yeah,
the
the danger is
details?
you get so wrapped up in research that
Yeah.
you forget to actually write the book.
I know I've heard that from a lot of historical writers that they love the history and details and research so much that they can just gather all this information and you can't put all that in your book.
Yeah.
But it's good for you to know, I guess, as the author.
It's you never want the reader to say, "Oh, I see you researched that well." You don't want your research to show.
Yeah, just needs to be just blended, right?
Just
Part of the
seamless,
story. Yeah.
woven in.
So let's talk about this new book, these Tangled Threads. You have it there with you. Show us. Look,
Yeah,
guys, look at that cover. Hold that up there. I just love it. When I saw it online,
I
I'm like,
know, it's
oh,
so pretty.
amazing. I love it so much. It really draws you in, and just the cover alone makes me want to read the book. So tell us what's inside that cover that would make us want to read the book.
So, like I said, my editor said, "How about a Biltmore book?" And I thought, well, how can I write a Biltmore book that's still true to this Appalachian everyday brand that I have? Biltmore Estate Industries was a way of educating young Appalachian youth, the boys and girls of the communities there in Western North Carolina. Some missionaries had actually come in to Asheville and started. Initially, it was focused on woodworking, and then they added weaving. And George and Edith Vanderbilt in the chateau on the hill above Biltmore Village learned about this and got involved, began to underwrite and subsidize Biltmore Estate Industries. And it really grew into an amazing business selling. I mean, there was a fabric produced by the weavers called Coolidge Gray, and there was also a Coolidge Red, which were named for the president and his wife who wore the fabric that was woven there in Asheville. And so as I started writing the story, I thought, well, okay, I've got this amazing history. So how am I going to work that out? Well, the heroine of the book, Lorna, is a master weaver, but it turns out that most of her patterns that she has kind of built her reputation on were borrowed, but people think they were hers.
Uh-oh.
And someone comes to her, and Cornelia Vanderbilt's wedding is coming up, and it was in April 1924. So let's see, her anniversary is in 5 days. Her 100th anniversary would be 5 days from now
Yeah.
when we're recording this
As the
on April
recording, right.
24th. Yeah. And so someone comes and says, I want you to, they commission a piece of fabric for Cornelia's wedding. But Lorna's like, I don't have any creativity. I don't have the ability to do this. So she's going to have to find this mysterious weaver she's heard about back in the hills and hollers who does have the ability so that she can borrow yet another design. And there's a girl from her past, Gentry, who she taught to weave, and then Gentry disappeared at some point. And could this weaver maybe be Gentry, the person who she butted heads with so long ago? And then there's Arthur, who is on the woodworking side of things, and there's a little spark between them, but she has pushed him away because she's a thief, and she doesn't want anyone to know.
Well, sounds like lots of intrigue and secrets. Her
Yes.
trying to
Poor decisions, lots of poor decisions.
kind of like real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you said in the past you've chosen like locations that were not real. You made up little towns. So obviously this one, I mean, is it
This
at
is,
real
yes, it's
live
set
Asheville?
Asheville. We go into Weaverville a little bit. I'm trying to think if there are other communities. There's lots of Biltmore Village. A key part of the story is the flood of 1916, which was this horrific flood that happened in Western North Carolina. Over a period of 24 hours, there was 22 inches of rain. So almost an inch of rain an hour. And the Biltmore Village was completely underwater. Water was up to 9 feet at the entrance of Biltmore Estate. So that's a pivotal point in the story, this terrible flood. And that's another historic piece of it. And I love putting in sweet little historical tidbits. There's, Cornelia's 21st birthday is mentioned in the book, and it talks about the staff, the workers on the estate, giving her a game bag for her birthday. They absolutely did.
Aw.
And when at her wedding, she wears orange blossom on her, I think it's on her headpiece and on the toes of her slippers. And those were sent from Chauncey Beadle, who had been in the gardens at Biltmore for so many years. And he sent them to her from Florida and she wore them in her wedding. And I was like, that's going in the book.
Oh,
But you got to put it in there in a way that it feels natural.
right. And I pretty much think historical fans love those things, right? They love those kind
Yes.
of details. Yeah.
Yeah, I always want to be like, that's true.
That's where you put your author note in the back.
I love writing the author note.
Yeah, yeah. So, how did you select names for the characters, or how do you normally go about choosing character names?
That is one of my favorite things to do. Like I said at the beginning, um, don't have kids of my own, so I love to name characters. And I come up with a lot of character names through having done genealogical research into my family. Gentry is actually a last name from the local area. Uh, Lorna was just she's lovelorn, and
Mm-hmm.
she's just kind of pitiful. And then Arthur, I just needed a good solid name for a good solid man.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I've had a lot of fun with other names, like in that first book I mentioned, When Silence Sings, that's set in Thurman. Sarepta is the name of the main character, and that's a name I got from my family genealogy, and it's just
Oh, that's very unique.
who could have named. But I have on my desk right here, uh, Dosha, Garnet, Ione, Ivorine, Thelma, and Xena. Those are all family names that I jotted
Wow.
down as I'm working on the next story.
Yeah, so you've got a pool already to choose from.
Yeah.
So in this book, these tangled threads, usually an author ends up with some kind of a running theme through the book or something you want readers to take away. What are you hoping when a reader turns that last page for them to take away from this book?
What I really wanted to explore with this story was childhood trauma. I spent 16 years working in children's ministry, Black Mountain Home for Children, and these are abused, abandoned, neglected kids in a group foster care setting. And I saw how kids could go through similar experiences, and it could affect them in really different ways. So these three main characters have all experienced childhood huge losses. Gentry, her father died. Her mother, she believes her mother abandoned her, and then she was left with a grandfather who really neglected her. Lorna lost both of her parents in really tragic circumstances. Arthur was one of many children to some very irresponsible parents who just gave him away to the church because they couldn't take care of him. And so I looked at how these three people had experienced these terrible traumas and dealt with them in really different ways. Lorna becomes very uh, perfectionistic and closed off. Gentry today would be diagnosed with ADHD. She's just all over the place. And
Mhm.
then Arthur becomes a protector and someone who wants to take care of everybody, a caretaker. So to look at how we go through experiences and then that shapes us as adults, but how ultimately there is one who can fix any pain and soothe any hurt. And that's who we have to ultimately look to if we want to put those traumatic circumstances behind us.
Yes. Now, I assume there's some kind of a spiritual thread um, in the book. I know a lot of, authors are different. Some it's a very prominent theme in
Mhm.
their books. Others it's just like subtle things like woven into the how the characters respond. What do you typically do there?
This one is pretty subtle. I've gone both directions. I've done some that were pretty overtly had a theme that you could just pick out right away. This one's pretty subtle because I wanted it to be more woven in because
Yeah.
that's what the book is
Yeah,
about.
no, well, that's right. Oh gosh, that's perfect. I gosh,
Healing and forgiveness. We actually did some fun giveaway bracelets that say restored. And I
mm,
think that's kind of the theme of the book, is that these are all people who need to be restored. And you can try to restore yourself all day long, but you're not going to get anywhere. You got to
mm,
let Jesus do it.
that's right. That's right. And so when does this book come out? Is it
It
out?
released April 2nd.
April 2nd.
So yep,
So it's out there now. People can
it's
grab it.
out there.
And we're going to be, or you're going to be giving away a copy to one of
Yep.
our people who watches this interview and comments. Scroll all the way down to the comments section after you watch and leave your comment there for a chance to win Sarah's book. Gosh, I wish I could enter.
We'll get you one.
Oh, it's sweet. Gosh, I could keep talking. I cannot even believe our time is up. I have so many more things that I could ask you, and we could just keep talking. But
Yeah.
sadly, I'm going to have to say this is the last question. What next? I know you mentioned a book in 2025, so I don't know what you
Yeah.
can tell us about that, but
It's set in Western North Carolina, and it's based around an enemy alien encampment that was in Hot Springs, North Carolina. At the beginning of World War One, sailors who were on ships in American harbors when war broke out, the United States said to them, "Welcome to America. You'll be staying for a while." And they had these enemy alien encampments. So these were German prisoners, but they weren't soldiers necessarily. And so that's the background, the historical background. And then in the 1930s, a Brit or a German woman named Hedda lost her fiance in one of these camps, and she thinks she's found what happened to him. So she comes to America to try to unravel that mystery, and it just gets more and more mysterious the more she pokes at it.
yeah, that sounds like a lot of tangled up stuff too.
It is. It's, the 1930s. She's come from Germany. Hitler has just become chancellor, so things are a little
Mhm.
crazy in Germany at that time. And yeah, reading a Hitler biography for your research is less fun than I thought it would be. And I
Oh,
didn't think it would be much fun.
no, that's got to be brutal.
It is.
A lot of people out there have no idea what authors put into a single book. I mean,
Yep.
the hours and hours and hours, days and weeks and months of pouring into that
I decided
book.
I would calculate my hour, how much I made an hour one time. And
That's so
then I was like,
sad.
this is a really bad idea.
I know. Yeah,
Never
I
mind.
wouldn't want to know. I would not want to
I
know
want
that.
to know.
That's why you gotta say, this is a ministry. That's why I tell my husband, it's a
Right.
ministry.
It's a calling.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. This has been so much fun to meet you
Thank
and
you.
talk to you and learn more about your book. And I look forward to reading it. And I know that lots of people out there are reading it and are looking forward to it as well. So thanks for sharing with us about it.
Glad to. Thanks for asking me.
All right. I'll see you around on social media.
Okay.